The restaurant was bustling with energy. Plates clinked, laughter echoed, and the murmur of conversations filled the air. Kara moved through the busy floor with practiced ease, balancing trays and taking orders with a polite smile. She was young, in her 20s, with a warmth about her that instantly made customers feel welcome. As she approached a table, her eyes softened as she noticed a picture of her little brother as her phone lit up. For Kara, this job wasn't just about paying bills. It was a way to support her family, especially her brother, who depended on her. Despite the long hours and the sometimes rude customers, she took pride in her work and gave it her all. Just as Kara was handing out menus, she noticed her manager, Dave, watching her from across the room. She straightened up, knowing he was the type to pick on every little detail. Dave was in his 40s, sharp-dressed but with an attitude that didn't match his clothes. He had a certain air about him, the kind that made people around him uncomfortable, especially his employees. He liked to assert his power, reminding everyone that he was in charge. Kara had learned to stay calm around him, to smile and avoid any conflict, but she couldn't help feeling a pang of irritation as his eyes followed her every move. When Kara returned to the counter, Dave was already there, looking impatient. He folded his arms, his eyes narrowing as he scanned her from head to toe. "Kara," he began in a voice dripping with condescension, "you need to pick up the pace. We can't have people waiting just because you're slow." She blinked, a bit taken aback by his sudden remark. She'd been on her feet all day, barely catching a break, but she forced a polite smile and nodded. "Yes, sir. I'll make sure to be quicker," she replied, keeping her voice steady. As she turned to leave, she felt his gaze lingering, a smug smile creeping onto his face. It was as if he was just waiting for her to mess up, ready to pounce at the slightest mistake. Kara took a deep breath, steadying herself as she walked away from Dave's piercing stare. She returned to her tables, greeting each customer with her usual warmth, but a flicker of unease lingered beneath her calm exterior. Dave's words replayed in her mind, laced with a bitterness she couldn't shake. She had grown used to his remarks over the months, but today, they stung just a little bit more. As she placed a steaming cup of coffee in front of a customer, she noticed an older man sitting in the corner of the restaurant watching her closely. He had a calm, thoughtful expression, and his gaze wasn't the usual judgmental glance she sometimes got. He was simply observing, a faint curiosity in his eyes. She offered him a quick smile before moving on, assuming he was just another customer. Moments later, as she was clearing a nearby table, Dave's voice rang out across the dining area. "Kara, you call that a clean table?" he barked, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. Heads turned and Kara froze, feeling her cheeks flush with embarrassment. She had wiped the table thoroughly, just as she always did. She turned to him, her mouth slightly open, words of defense hovering on her lips, but she held them back, knowing any response would only make things worse. "Yes, sir. I'll clean it again," she replied softly, swallowing her pride. She picked up a cloth, hands shaking slightly as she moved back to the table under Dave's critical gaze. She felt her stomach tighten, her patience being tested. It wasn't the first time he had singled her out in front of customers, and each time it chipped away a little more at her confidence. The older man in the corner continued to watch, his gaze sharpening as he witnessed the scene. His expression changed slightly, a hint of disapproval flickering across his face as he observed the way Dave treated her. Kara noticed his reaction out of the corner of her eye and felt a surprising sense of comfort. It was small, almost imperceptible, but knowing that someone else had seen the unfairness of it all made her feel a little less alone. Kara tried to shake off the sting of Dave's public criticism, focusing on her tasks as she moved around the restaurant. She reminded herself why she was there, for her family, for her brother. But each time she looked up, she saw Dave pacing the floor, his eyes following her every move. It was as though he were waiting, just looking for another chance to undermine her in front of everyone. The restaurant filled with new customers as the dinner rush began. Kara, now juggling multiple tables, moved as swiftly as she could, but the pressure was mounting. At one of her tables, a group of young customers chatted and laughed, their voices rising with each passing moment. One of them accidentally knocked over a glass, sending water spilling across the table and onto the floor. Instinctively, Kara jumped into action, grabbing napkins and a cloth to clean it up. She reassured the customers, calming them with her usual friendly manner. But she knew what was coming before she even looked up. "Kara!" Dave's voice was sharp and cutting, slicing through the sounds of the busy restaurant. He strode over, eyes narrowing as he looked at the spilled water on the floor. "What do you think you're doing, making a mess like this in front of customers? Can't you handle simple tasks?" His words were loud, harsh, and filled with a tone that dripped with disdain. He gestured broadly, making sure everyone in the vicinity could see the mistake she had made, though it was hardly her fault. Kara felt her cheeks flush hot, her fingers gripping the cloth tightly. She opened her mouth to explain, to say that it wasn't her who had spilled the drink, but a voice inside urged her to stay silent. She knew anything she said would only fuel his anger. Dave continued, not giving her a chance to respond. "If you can't do the job right, maybe you don't belong here," he sneered, his voice laced with an unmistakable edge. Out of the corner of her eye, Kara saw the older man from earlier. He watched the scene unfold, his face now darkened with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Slowly, he took out his phone, tapping a few times as if sending a message. There was a quiet determination in his movements, as though he'd decided on something. Kara felt a flicker of curiosity about what he might be doing, but her thoughts were interrupted as Dave huffed and stormed away, leaving her standing in the center of the restaurant, the focus of everyone's silent stares. She took a steadying breath, trying to swallow the bitter taste of humiliation that lingered in her throat. Kara forced herself to keep going, pushing the humiliation aside as best she could. She resumed her work, moving from table to table, her hands steady but her heart pounding. The customers who had witnessed the scene glanced at her with a mixture of pity and discomfort, and she could feel the weight of their stares. But she kept her chin up, reminding herself that this job was temporary, just a step toward a better future. As she took an order at a nearby table, she noticed the older man from the corner table once again. He was watching her carefully, his phone still in hand, his expression thoughtful and focused. Kara wondered what he must think of her now. She'd done nothing wrong, but under Dave's constant scrutiny and harsh words, it was hard not to feel like she had somehow failed. A few minutes later, she was heading back toward the kitchen when she felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. She turned, surprised to find the older man standing beside her, his eyes kind but serious. "Excuse me, miss," he began in a quiet voice. "I couldn't help but notice what just happened. That was unacceptable." Kara's eyes widened slightly, caught off guard by his directness. She was used to people turning away, ignoring the unfair treatment, or even pretending not to notice. She managed a small, appreciative smile. "Thank you, sir," she said softly, a hint of gratitude in her voice. "It's just part of the job sometimes." The man's gaze didn't waver. "It shouldn't be," he replied firmly. There was a pause as he considered his words, then he added, "You deserve better than that." He glanced around, noticing that other staff members and customers had been observing the exchange as well. People like him shouldn't be in positions of power, not when they treat others like that. Kara nodded, unsure of what to say. She felt a strange mix of relief and embarrassment, not used to someone standing up for her, especially a stranger. The man gave her a reassuring nod, then said, "I've sent a message to someone who might be able to help. Just hang in there." Before she could process his words or thank him, he stepped away, returning to his table. Kara stood there for a moment, feeling a warmth spread through her chest, a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. But she couldn't let herself believe it just yet. Kara's mind buzzed with the man's words as she resumed her work, his reassurance lingering like a small light in the back of her mind. She tried to shake it off, not wanting to get her hopes up. But there was something about the firmness in his voice, the quiet conviction in his gaze, that made her feel a rare sense of validation. Still, she knew all too well that promises didn't always lead to action, especially in a place like this where Dave's word was law. As she cleared plates from a table, Dave's voice cut through the noise again, summoning her to the front of the restaurant. Her heart sank, sensing another confrontation. She took a steadying breath and made her way over, trying to prepare herself for whatever criticism he had ready this time. When she arrived, Dave was standing with his arms crossed, impatience written all over his face. "Kara," he began, his tone dripping with condescension, "I've noticed that you're spending more time chatting with customers than actually doing your job. This is a restaurant, not a social club. Maybe you should focus on keeping things running smoothly instead of trying to win everyone's sympathy." He smirked, a satisfied gleam in his eyes as he delivered the insult, as though he relished every word. Kara felt a flash of anger rise within her, but she quickly swallowed it, knowing that any reaction would only fuel him further. She nodded, keeping her gaze steady, refusing to let him see how deeply his words stung. "Understood, sir," she replied simply, her voice calm but strained. She was about to turn away when she noticed something unusual. Dave's phone buzzed in his pocket, and he pulled it out with a slight frown. She watched as his expression shifted, the smirk fading as he stared at the screen. His face darkened, a shadow of irritation mixed with confusion crossing his features. He glanced around the restaurant, looking briefly unsettled, before stuffing the phone back into his pocket and attempting to regain his usual swagger. But there was a stiffness in his movements now, a slight hesitation, as though something had rattled him. Kara couldn't help but feel a spark of curiosity. Whatever message he'd received, it had shaken him, if only slightly. For the first time that night, she felt the balance of power shift, if only by a fraction. She couldn't be sure what was happening, but the thought of Dave feeling even a fraction of discomfort lifted her spirits, just a little. As she moved back to her table, she glanced over at the older man once more. He offered her a reassuring nod, and for the first time, Kara allowed herself a faint smile. She had no idea what he had set in motion, but she felt a tiny glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have to endure Dave's abuse forever. Kara carried on with her duties, a small flicker of satisfaction warming her as she replayed the moment Dave had faltered, his smug confidence cracked by whatever message he'd received. She wasn't used to seeing him even slightly unsettled, and that brief glimpse of his discomfort had been a balm to her wounded pride. As she served the next table, her movements felt a bit lighter, her shoulders a little less tense. Not long after, she heard a quiet commotion near the entrance. Two men in crisp business suits had entered the restaurant, their presence commanding immediate attention. They looked around briefly before one of them spotted Dave, who was hovering near the counter, trying to maintain his air of authority. Kara noticed the subtle shift in his posture as he saw the men. His shoulders squared, his expression tensed. It was clear he recognized them, and not in a way that brought him comfort. The taller of the two men, wearing a sharp blue suit and a stern expression, stepped forward. "Dave," he said in a tone that carried a weight of authority, "we need to have a word. Now." His voice was low, but there was no mistaking the seriousness in his tone. Dave's face paled slightly. He glanced around, clearly aware that half the restaurant was watching. "Of course, sir," he replied, his voice noticeably strained. He followed the men to a quiet corner of the restaurant, his usual confidence replaced by an edge of nervousness. Kara couldn't help but notice the older man from earlier, observing the scene with a quiet, knowing look. She felt a twinge of curiosity and excitement, realizing that he must have had something to do with this unexpected visit. For the first time since she'd started working here, she saw Dave vulnerable, no longer in complete control. It was a sight she hadn't thought she'd ever see. As the men spoke to Dave in hushed but stern voices, Kara went about her tasks, sneaking glances whenever she could. Dave's expression grew increasingly agitated, his face shifting from surprise to frustration to barely concealed panic. He gestured a few times, his hands moving as if he were trying to explain himself, but the men's stony expressions didn't soften. Whatever they were discussing, it was clear that Dave was on the defensive. Kara sensed a ripple of curiosity and tension among her co-workers as well. Some of them whispered quietly, exchanging glances as they noticed Dave's unusual demeanor. Normally so overbearing, he now looked almost cornered. It was an odd, almost surreal shift, as though the unshakable power he wielded over everyone had started to slip from his grasp. In the midst of it all, Kara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The conversation between Dave and the two men continued, their voices low but their body language intense. Dave's face was tight, his attempts to speak met with subtle but firm interruptions. Kara watched from a distance, trying not to make it too obvious. But every now and then, their voices lifted just enough for her to catch fragments of their words. Multiple complaints. Unacceptable conduct, the taller man was saying, his tone like steel. Dave's face flushed as he glanced around, his eyes darting nervously to see if anyone was paying attention. He tried to protest, his voice quivering with barely restrained anger. "There must be some mistake," he muttered, but it sounded more like a plea than a statement. The shorter man in the gray suit gave a curt shake of his head. "This isn't just one incident, Dave. Your behavior has been noted over time. Today's events were simply the tipping point." He glanced around the restaurant as he spoke, as if taking in the place that Dave had once ruled with an iron fist. Kara felt a thrill of satisfaction at their words. She glanced at her co-workers, many of whom had noticed the strange meeting. She caught the eye of one of them, a young hostess named Sarah, who gave her a small, hopeful smile. The atmosphere among the staff was subtly shifting. The invisible weight of Dave's constant scrutiny and judgment seemed to lift, if only for a moment. As the conversation grew tenser, Kara's curiosity deepened. She wondered if the older man from earlier, the one who had reassured her and then sent that mysterious message, was somehow behind all of this. She caught his eye across the room and he offered her a slight nod, almost as if he knew exactly what she was thinking. Finally, the two men turned to Dave, their expressions final, leaving no room for argument. The taller man spoke, his words ringing with a clarity that reached every corner of the restaurant. "Dave, you're officially suspended, effective immediately. Further disciplinary actions will follow pending a full investigation. You'll be escorted out." A silence fell over the restaurant, thick with shock and disbelief. Dave looked like he'd been punched in the gut. He opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. His face turned red, a mixture of anger and humiliation as he struggled to regain control of the situation, but it was clear that he was powerless now. Kara felt an overwhelming sense of justice watching him. The very man who had belittled her and treated her like she was less than nothing, now facing a humiliation of his own. She kept her expression neutral, but inside, a sense of triumph blossomed. Dave's reign over them was crumbling, and for the first time, she felt truly seen, truly valued. The man who had stood up for her had somehow managed to bring about a change she never thought possible, and it was happening right before her eyes. Dave stood there, visibly shaken, his fists clenched at his sides as he processed the shock of his suspension. The restaurant staff watched in stunned silence, some exchanging glances of disbelief and barely concealed relief. The two men who had delivered the news remained firm, their gazes unwavering, clearly unaffected by Dave's silent fury. After a tense pause, Dave finally forced out a bitter laugh, though it sounded more like a hollow bark. "This is absurd," he spat, his voice low but trembling with anger. "You're making a mistake. I've run this place successfully for years. You can't just—" He trailed off, realizing his words were falling on unsympathetic ears. The taller man raised an eyebrow, his expression unyielding. "Dave, we've already discussed this. We received multiple complaints over time, and today's incident was witnessed firsthand. This decision isn't open for negotiation." Dave's face turned a deeper shade of red as he bit back a retort. He glanced around the restaurant, searching for support, but all he found were averted eyes and subdued smiles from his staff. Even the loyal few who had always sided with him looked away, unwilling to risk their own positions by standing with him now. The silence grew heavier, and Dave's shoulders slumped, the weight of his defeat settling over him. With a final glare at the two men, he muttered under his breath and turned toward the exit. The staff parted slightly as he walked past, some still processing the shock of what they'd just witnessed. Dave's steps were heavy, his once commanding presence reduced to that of a man trying to escape the eyes of those who had silently suffered under his rule. As he passed Kara, he shot her a look filled with contempt, as if blaming her for his downfall. She held his gaze steadily, refusing to let him see any sign of fear or submission. She could feel her own pulse racing, a mixture of relief and vindication swelling within her. This was the moment she'd never thought would come, the moment she watched Dave's grip over her and her coworkers crumble completely. Just as he reached the door, the older man who had been watching from the corner cleared his throat. "Dave," he said, his voice calm but carrying an authority that caught everyone's attention. Dave stopped in his tracks, his hand hovering over the door handle, and looked back, his face twisted with bitterness. The man continued, his voice steady and unyielding. "You might want to think about how you treat people next time, if there is a next time. This didn't happen by accident." His words hung in the air, a final blow that stripped Dave of any remaining shred of dignity. The implication was clear. This reckoning had been a long time coming, and everyone in the room knew it. With a defeated huff, Dave turned and stormed out, the door swinging shut behind him. The silence in the restaurant was electric, a collective exhale from the staff and customers alike. And as the echoes of Dave's departure faded, Kara felt a weight lift from her chest, replaced by a powerful sense of freedom and possibility. As the door closed behind Dave, the silence in the restaurant lingered, thick with the realization that a chapter had just ended. Slowly, the tension eased, replaced by a quiet hum of whispered conversations and exchanged glances among the staff. Kara could see relief washing over her co-workers' faces, their postures visibly relaxing for the first time in what felt like ages. A few even shared smiles, as if celebrating this unexpected shift without words. Kara's heart was still racing, her mind trying to absorb everything that had just happened. The older man, the one who had stood up for her, who had sparked this change, caught her eye and gave her a nod of approval. He walked over, his expression softening as he approached. "I hope that makes things a bit better around here," he said, his tone warm but measured. "You deserve to work in a place where you're respected." Kara felt a surge of gratitude, her voice catching as she tried to find the right words. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't think I could have done this without you." She wanted to say more, to express just how much his support meant, but words felt insufficient. The man smiled, a kindness in his eyes that seemed to understand her gratitude without her having to explain it. "It's people like you who make places like this worth visiting," he replied. "Remember that." He extended his hand to her, and as she shook it, she felt a sense of validation that had been missing for so long. He turned to leave, but before he walked out the door, he glanced back once more, giving her a final nod of encouragement. As he left, Kara felt her spirits lifted in a way she hadn't felt in years. She looked around at her co-workers, who were now exchanging quiet laughs and relieved smiles, and felt an unexpected swell of camaraderie. Sarah, the young hostess, approached her with a wide grin. "Did you see his face?" Sarah whispered, her eyes shining with barely contained excitement. "I never thought I'd see the day." A few other staff members nodded in agreement, murmuring about how different things would be now, how they could finally breathe without Dave's constant judgment looming over them. Kara smiled, feeling the warmth of solidarity growing around her. She knew that this was just the beginning of a new atmosphere, one where respect and fairness might actually have a chance to thrive. She felt a powerful sense of relief, knowing she wouldn't have to endure Dave's mistreatment anymore, and that somehow things had aligned to bring about this moment of justice. As she returned to her work, the restaurant felt like an entirely different place. The weight of fear and anxiety had lifted, replaced by an energy of hope and possibility. And for the first time, Kara looked forward to the future, feeling empowered and ready to embrace whatever came next. The evening continued with a renewed sense of calm that seemed to ripple through the entire staff. Kara felt a lightness in her steps, a freedom in her work that had been absent for so long. She moved from table to table, serving customers with her usual grace. But now there was something new. A quiet confidence, the knowledge that she could do her job without the constant shadow of Dave's criticism looming over her. As the restaurant slowly emptied, Kara and her co-workers began the usual cleanup routine. But tonight there was an unusual sense of camaraderie in the air. A few staff members gathered by the counter, sharing laughs and stories, their laughter filling the quiet space in a way that felt almost like a celebration. Even those who rarely spoke seemed more open, more at ease, as if they were finally free to let their guards down. Sarah, the hostess, came over to Kara, a grin still lingering on her face. "Kara, I still can't believe it. You know, you were always the bravest one here, putting up with all that nonsense." She shook her head, admiration clear in her eyes. "None of us had the guts to stand up to him but you. You showed so much strength. We all saw it." Kara felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling of pride mixed with gratitude. She hadn't realized how much her quiet resilience had meant to her co-workers. "Thank you, Sarah," she replied softly. I never thought anyone noticed." "Are you kidding?" Sarah laughed. "We all noticed. You handled it better than any of us ever could. And you know what? I think he knew that too. That's why he targeted you." She gave Kara's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "But now he's gone and you're still here. That says a lot." As the others joined in, sharing stories of small victories and sighs of relief, Kara felt a sense of belonging that she hadn't felt before. For so long, she had thought she was alone in dealing with Dave's scrutiny. But now she saw that her quiet strength had inspired her co-workers, that they had drawn strength from her, even if she hadn't known it at the time. As they finished their tasks and prepared to close up, the restaurant manager, one of the men who had confronted Dave, returned. He walked up to the group with a friendly but professional smile. "I just wanted to thank all of you for your patience and hard work. We're going to be making some changes around here, starting with making sure this is a place where everyone feels respected." He turned to Kara specifically, acknowledging her with a slight nod. "And Kara, thank you for showing such resilience. We recognize what you've endured, and I want you to know that your efforts haven't gone unnoticed. In fact, we'd like to offer you a chance to participate in our employee development program. It's a way to support your growth, and I think you'd be a great candidate." Kara's eyes widened, surprise and gratitude flooding her expression. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady but filled with emotion. She hadn't expected this, an opportunity to move forward, to be seen not just as an employee but as someone with potential. The manager smiled, nodding in encouragement. "You've earned it. Keep up the great work." He turned to address the whole team, adding, "And thank you all for sticking together. Better days are coming." As he walked away, the team exchanged thrilled glances, the atmosphere buzzing with optimism. For the first time, Kara felt not only valued but empowered. She had stood her ground, and somehow things had changed. She was no longer just surviving, she was moving forward, surrounded by people who finally saw her strength. As the restaurant closed for the night, Kara lingered a little longer, absorbing the surreal feeling of everything that had happened. The staff had all gathered their things, exchanging goodbyes with a renewed sense of friendliness and unity. The air felt different, lighter somehow, as though the entire place had been cleansed of the heavy presence that Dave had cast over it for so long. Kara couldn't help but feel that this was the start of something entirely new, not just for her, but for everyone who had endured Dave's rule. She finally stepped outside into the cool night, pulling her jacket tighter around her shoulders. As she walked toward the bus stop, she replayed the events of the evening in her mind, still marveling at the unexpected turn of fate. She thought about the older man who had spoken up for her, about his quiet yet powerful intervention, and how he had seemingly orchestrated the chain of events that had led to Dave's downfall. She felt a deep sense of gratitude toward him, and a small part of her wondered if she'd ever get the chance to thank him properly. As she waited for her bus, she checked her phone, scrolling through messages from friends and a few missed calls from her younger brother. She smiled, feeling a wave of warmth as she thought about how she could finally tell him about her new opportunity. She could almost picture his excited face, the way his eyes would light up when he heard that his sister might finally get a chance to move up in the world. For so long, she had shouldered the responsibilities quietly, never wanting to burden him with the struggles she faced, but now, for the first time, she felt like she had good news to share. Her phone buzzed with a new notification, and she was surprised to see a message from Sarah. It was a simple text. "We're all so proud of you, Kara. Things are finally going to get better around here. You did this." Kara felt her eyes welling up as she read it, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and humility. She typed a quick reply, thanking Sarah and letting her know how much her support meant. The bus arrived and Kara climbed aboard, finding a seat by the window. As she watched the city lights blur past, she allowed herself to dream of new opportunities, of a workplace where she was valued, of a future where she didn't have to dread every shift. She felt stronger than ever, knowing that her resilience had not only lifted her own spirit, but had also brought change to those around her. And as the bus pulled into her neighborhood, she stepped off with a new sense of purpose, her steps light and sure. For the first time in a long time, Kara was walking forward, leaving behind the shadows of the past and moving toward the promise of a brighter tomorrow. The next morning, Kara arrived at the restaurant early, the quiet hum of the place welcoming her in a way that felt almost comforting. She walked in with her head held high, her usual nerves replaced by a quiet confidence. The familiar clinking of dishes, the warm light filtering through the windows, and the gentle murmur of her co-workers settling into their stations. It all felt different, like a fresh beginning. Sarah greeted her with a smile that seemed brighter than usual. "Good morning, superstar," she said with a playful grin, giving Kara a quick hug. "Ready for day one of the new era?" Kara laughed, feeling her cheeks flush slightly. "I don't know about superstar," she replied, "but I'm definitely ready for a fresh start." She looked around at the other staff members, each of whom had begun their work with an energy that felt positive, hopeful. There was a sense of togetherness in the room, an unspoken understanding that they had all been through something together and had come out stronger on the other side. As the morning rush picked up, Kara noticed that the entire team seemed more collaborative. Where there used to be silent dread, now there was laughter and camaraderie. Sarah and a few of the other servers jumped in to help each other with tables, and the kitchen staff worked with an easy rhythm, no longer rushing nervously under Dave's scrutinizing gaze. For the first time, Kara felt like she was part of a team, each person supporting one another without the tension that had once hung over them. Mid-morning, the restaurant's regional manager, one of the men who had confronted Dave the previous night, came in to observe the staff and ensure the transition was smooth. He approached Kara as she was serving a table, his expression warm and approving. "Kara, I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. I know things have changed a lot recently, and we appreciate how steady you've been through it all." Kara smiled, meeting his gaze with newfound confidence. "Thank you, sir. I'm really grateful for the opportunity, and honestly, it's already made a big difference." The manager nodded, clearly pleased. "That's good to hear. We're committed to keeping this place a positive environment, and we know we can count on you to help us keep it that way." He gave her an encouraging nod before moving on to speak with other team members, but his words stayed with Kara, filling her with pride. As the day went on, Kara couldn't help but marvel at the transformation happening around her. The restaurant had always been the same space, the same tables and walls, but now it felt like a place she could truly belong. The staff's respect for each other was growing, and with it, so was her respect for herself. She realized that she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving, part of a team that finally valued her for who she was. As the lunch hour approached, the restaurant filled with a steady stream of customers, and the team worked together like a well-oiled machine. Kara moved confidently between tables, her interactions with customers smooth and natural. With Dave gone, she felt liberated, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from her shoulders. For the first time in ages, she was able to focus solely on her job without that persistent knot of anxiety in her chest. While taking an order from a family at one of her tables, Kara noticed a group of familiar faces walking in. They were regulars who had always been polite and friendly to her, but today, they seemed particularly happy to see her. One of them, a woman named Linda, gave her a knowing smile as Kara approached their table. "We heard the news," Linda said warmly, her eyes twinkling. "Looks like things are finally looking up for you all." Kara chuckled, surprised but pleased that word had traveled so quickly. "Yes, it's a whole new world around here," she replied, a hint of pride in her voice. "Everyone's working together and it just feels different, in the best way possible." Linda nodded, leaning in slightly. "Well, it's about time. You've always been so professional, even when things looked rough. We're glad you're finally being appreciated the way you deserve." Kara felt a swell of gratitude as she took their order, her heart warmed by the unexpected support. She realized that not only her co-workers but also the customers had noticed her efforts all along. She had always been so focused on pushing through each day that she hadn't stopped to consider how many people were quietly rooting for her. This simple validation from Linda and the others made her feel like her hard work had truly been seen and valued. After placing their order, she returned to the table with a smile and thanked them for their kindness. "You have no idea how much that means to me," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "It's been a long road, but I feel like things are finally changing for the better." Linda gave her an encouraging nod. "Keep going, Kara. You've got something special. And don't let anyone ever make you doubt that." As she walked back to the counter, Kara felt an undeniable sense of pride in herself, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to feel for a long time. She glanced around the restaurant, taking in the new energy that filled the space, and for the first time, she felt a sense of ownership in her role. This was her place too, a place where she had earned her respect, and where she could finally look forward to each day without fear. As the lunch rush began to wind down, Kara took a brief moment to rest at the counter, savoring the peacefulness that had settled over the restaurant. She watched her co-workers laughing and chatting as they worked, the atmosphere so different from the tension-filled days under Dave's reign. It felt surreal, yet wonderfully real, as if this was the way things were always meant to be. Just then, one of the kitchen staff, Marcos, came out holding a plate of food with a sheepish grin. He'd always been a bit reserved, rarely speaking more than necessary, but today he seemed different, more open. "Hey, Kara," he said, setting the plate down in front of her. "I made this special for you. You've been working so hard. You deserve a break." Kara looked down, surprised and touched by the gesture. It was her favorite dish, something she rarely treated herself to because she was usually too busy to stop and eat. She smiled up at Marcos, grateful for his kindness. "Thank you, Marcos. This is so thoughtful," she said, feeling a warmth settle in her chest. The little acts of kindness from her co-workers were yet another reminder of the positive change sweeping through the restaurant. As she sat down to eat, Sarah joined her, grabbing a cup of coffee and plopping down across the table. "It's like we're a family now, isn't it?" Sarah said, her voice filled with a mix of wonder and joy. "I never thought I'd feel this way about work." Kara nodded, taking a bite of her meal. "It really is. It's amazing how much things have changed in just a day." She looked around the restaurant, noticing how everyone moved with ease and cooperation. "I guess sometimes it takes a storm to clear the air," she added thoughtfully. Sarah grinned. "And you were the anchor through it all, Kara. Seriously, I think we all saw you as a kind of leader, even before all this happened. You never let him break you, and that gave us strength too." Kara's cheeks flushed at the compliment. She had always seen herself as simply surviving, doing what was necessary to get through each shift. But now, seeing herself through her co-workers' eyes, she realized that her quiet resilience had meant something more. Her perseverance had been a kind of silent defiance, a refusal to let someone else define her worth. And in doing so, She had unknowingly inspired those around her. They finished their impromptu lunch, and as Kara got up to clear her plate, the regional manager entered the dining area once more, catching her attention. "Kara, do you have a moment?" he asked with a warm smile. She nodded, following him to a quieter corner of the restaurant. He looked at her with a mixture of respect and encouragement. "We've been so impressed by your strength and dedication," he began. "We're implementing some new policies, including a program to promote employees who demonstrate leadership and resilience. We'd like you to be one of the first participants if you're interested." Kara's eyes widened, her heart leaping with excitement. This wasn't just a recognition of her hard work. It was an opportunity to grow, to step into a role she had never dared to dream of before. She nodded, her voice filled with gratitude. "I'd be honored, sir. Thank you so much for believing in me." The manager smiled. "The honor is ours, Kara. We're lucky to have someone like you here." As he walked away, Kara felt a profound sense of purpose settle within her. She realized that her journey was no longer about merely enduring. It was about growing, inspiring, and leading. She looked around at her team, her heart swelling with a new vision for her future. For the first time, she saw not just a job, but a path, one that she was ready to walk with confidence. As the afternoon sun began to dip outside the restaurant windows, Kara continued her work, but now with a deep sense of purpose and excitement bubbling inside her. The idea of moving forward, of becoming a leader in this space that had once felt like a prison, filled her with energy she hadn't known she possessed. The thought that her resilience had inspired her coworkers and caught the attention of management still felt surreal. Yet here she was, stepping into a new chapter she'd never imagined. The restaurant was in a lull between the lunch and dinner rushes when Kara noticed a familiar face enter. Alex, the older man who had intervened on her behalf that unforgettable night. He smiled warmly when he saw her and walked over, his demeanor as calm and confident as ever. "I thought I'd stop by and see how things were going," he said with a nod, his eyes glinting with genuine curiosity. Kara's face lit up with gratitude as she extended her hand. "Alex, I don't think I'll ever be able to thank you enough," she said, her voice brimming with emotion. "You have no idea how much you changed things for me, for all of us." He shook her hand warmly, his gaze steady. "I just gave a little nudge, Kara. You did all the hard work, and now look at you, you're thriving." He glanced around, noting the cheerful atmosphere, the camaraderie among the staff, and the ease with which everyone seemed to be working. "I can tell this place feels different, more alive." Kara nodded, following his gaze. "It's like a different world. Everyone's happier, we're working together, and I finally feel like I belong here." She paused, taking a deep breath. "And I've even been given a chance to move up, to actually grow in this role. I never thought that was possible before." Alex's face softened, his eyes full of pride. "That's all you, Kara. I could tell from the moment I saw you that you had strength, a quiet resilience. It's rare to see someone handle hardship with as much grace as you did. You inspired others without even realizing it." Kara felt a swell of emotion at his words. She had always felt that her strength was something she carried alone, but hearing it acknowledged by someone who had witnessed her struggle made it feel real, as though her journey had meaning beyond just survival. Alex pulled a small card from his pocket and handed it to her. "If you ever need anything, give me a call. I know people in the industry who value hard work and integrity just like you. It's not every day you come across someone who inspires others the way you do." Kara took the card, staring at it for a moment before meeting his gaze. "Thank you, Alex. Really. I'll keep this safe." She knew the card represented more than just an opportunity. It was a reminder that she wasn't alone, that there were people who saw her worth and were willing to help her rise. As Alex gave her a final nod and left, Kara tucked the card into her pocket, feeling its reassuring weight. She returned to her duties, her heart full, her spirit renewed. The future, which had once seemed like a distant dream, was now within reach, and she was ready to embrace it with everything she had. She had built her strength quietly, but now she understood its power, its ability to transform not only her own life but the lives of those around her. And for the first time, she was ready to lead, to step fully into the person she had fought so hard to become. As the evening shift settled in, Kara felt a sense of excitement and calm blend together within her. The restaurant began to fill once again with the dinner crowd, but instead of feeling the usual rush of stress and fatigue, she felt energized. Every table she served, every interaction with her co-workers felt purposeful, as though she were rediscovering the simple joys of her work in this new, respectful environment. About halfway through the evening, the regional manager returned with a small group from corporate, faces Kara hadn't seen before, but who looked official and serious. They took a quiet tour around the restaurant, observing everything with thoughtful expressions. As they passed by Kara, the regional manager paused to introduce her to the group, his voice brimming with pride. "This is Kara," he said with a warm smile. "She's one of our best and has been with us through all the changes. Her dedication and leadership have really set the standard for the team." He looked at her, his expression genuine. "We're planning to launch our new employee development program with her as one of our first participants." Kara's cheeks flushed with surprise and pride, and she gave a humble smile, shaking hands with each member of the corporate team. They each expressed their appreciation, congratulating her for her resilience and her positive influence on the restaurant's culture. One of them, a senior executive, gave her an approving nod. "We need more people like you in our organization, Kara," he said. "People who lead with integrity and make others feel valued. Thank you for everything you've done here." The words resonated deeply with her, and she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and validation. She had endured so much, kept her head down, and persevered through countless hardships, never expecting recognition, much less praise. But now she was seen, acknowledged, not just as a worker but as someone capable of leading and inspiring. After the corporate team moved on, Sarah hurried over, her face beaming with excitement. "Kara, did you hear that? They see you as a leader. Can you believe it?" she said, her voice a mixture of awe and pride. Kara smiled, her heart full. "It feels incredible. I never thought anything like this would happen," she admitted, still absorbing the reality of her new path. She glanced around the restaurant, watching her co-workers work with enthusiasm and a newfound unity. She realized that this wasn't just about her, it was about all of them. They had supported each other, lifted each other up, and together they had changed this place into something special. As the night came to a close, the entire team gathered to finish the last tasks of the day. Instead of the usual hurried silence, there was laughter, a shared sense of accomplishment, and an understanding that they were all part of something greater. Kara felt like she was at the heart of it all, no longer just a part of the team, but a core part of its strength and spirit. Before leaving, the regional manager approached her one last time. "Kara, I know we've said it already, but thank you. I'm confident that with you here, we're only going to see more growth and positivity." Kara nodded, her voice steady and sure. "Thank you, sir. I'm ready for whatever comes next." And as she walked out that night, she felt not only accomplished but profoundly capable, ready to face the future with a strength that had been hard-won and deeply rooted. She had found her voice, her purpose, and her place, and for the first time she knew she belonged. As Kara left the restaurant that night, she felt a quiet excitement settle over her, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. The day had been transformative in ways she was only beginning to understand, and her heart swelled with gratitude. She walked down the quiet streets toward the bus stop, feeling like she was on the brink of a new chapter, one that would take her to places she had once thought were out of reach. The night air was cool and refreshing, and she allowed herself to fully savor the moment. She thought about her journey, the days when Dave's criticisms had worn her down, the nights she'd gone home feeling defeated, wondering if she would ever be more than just a waitress who bore the brunt of his temper. But now, all of that seemed like a distant memory. a shadow that had finally lifted. When she reached the bus stop, she checked her phone and saw a message from her little brother. He'd sent her a picture of himself with his school's sports team, proudly holding up a trophy. Kara smiled, feeling a surge of pride and joy. Her brother was her motivation, the reason she had pushed through so many difficult days. She quickly sent him a congratulatory text, promising to take him out to celebrate soon. As she put her phone away, she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Sarah standing there, her face lit up with excitement. "Hey, I caught up to you just in time," Sarah said, slightly out of breath. "A few of us were planning to go out for a little celebration. You should come." Kara hesitated, feeling a little surprised by the invitation. She'd always been somewhat of a lone wolf at work, never expecting to be part of a social circle, but things were different now. She saw Sarah's enthusiasm and realized that this was more than just an invitation. It was a chance to truly connect with her co-workers in a way she hadn't before. After a moment, she smiled and nodded. "I'd love to. Let's go," she replied, feeling a new sense of belonging. They made their way to a cozy cafe nearby, where a few other team members had already gathered. The atmosphere was relaxed and joyful, and as they settled in, Kara felt a warmth spread through her, a sense of community that was unfamiliar but deeply comforting. They shared stories, laughed about the quirks of their workdays, and even swapped memories of Dave, each recollection met with laughter and relief that those days were finally behind them. As the night went on, Kara realized that she wasn't just a part of the team. She was a valued member, someone her co-workers respected and admired. They toasted to new beginnings, and for the first time, Kara felt a sense of true friendship and unity with the people she worked alongside. It was a night she would remember, a night that marked the start of a new era, not only in the restaurant, but in her own life. As the celebration continued, Kara felt herself letting go, laughing more freely than she had in a long time. For once, she wasn't just the quiet, resilient worker enduring each day. She was part of a team that genuinely cared for one another. The cozy cafe was filled with the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses as her coworkers shared stories and dreams, opening up in a way they'd never dared before. It felt like everyone was healing from the scars of their past together, each story a small piece of closure. Sarah leaned over, her eyes bright with excitement. "You know, Kara, we all owe this to you. I don't think any of us would have had the strength to go through what we did without watching you stand tall every day." Kara felt a blush rise to her cheeks, humbled by Sarah's words. "I just did what I had to do to get through each day," she replied quietly, though her heart swelled with pride. "Honestly, I didn't even realize anyone else was watching." "Are you kidding?" Marcos interjected, leaning in. "We all watched. You gave us hope just by showing up and handling things with grace. And now, we all get to enjoy the place we work in because you didn't let him break you." The words filled Kara with a warmth that was almost overwhelming. For so long, she'd seen her endurance as something solitary, something that had simply kept her afloat. But now, she understood that her strength had meant something to the people around her, had given them courage in ways she hadn't known. They had found solidarity in her resilience, drawn a sense of hope from her quiet determination. As the evening wound down, Kara glanced around the table, taking in the smiling faces of her co-workers. She realized that this wasn't just a celebration of Dave's departure or the beginning of a new chapter at the restaurant. It was a celebration of each person at that table, of their perseverance, their courage, and the bonds that had formed despite the hardships they'd endured. When the time came to leave, they all hugged and said their goodbyes, a new closeness binding them together. As Kara walked home that night, the city lights shimmering around her, she felt a profound sense of peace and belonging. The people she'd once seen as mere co-workers had become something more, allies, friends, maybe even a family of sorts. And as she made her way through the quiet streets, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just heading into a new phase at the restaurant, she was heading into a new chapter of her life, one where she knew her worth, had friends who believed in her, and a future that she could shape with her own hands. For the first time in a long time, Kara felt truly alive, truly ready to embrace everything that lay ahead. The following morning, Kara woke up with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. Sunlight streamed through her window, and for once she felt genuinely excited to go to work. The memories of the previous night, her co-workers' words of admiration, the laughter they'd shared, and the sense of unity that had blossomed among them, lingered in her mind, giving her a renewed sense of energy and purpose. She dressed with care, a small smile tugging at her lips as she imagined the day ahead, knowing it would be nothing like the tense, draining days she used to endure. When she arrived at the restaurant, she was greeted with friendly waves and warm smiles from her team. It was a small but powerful reminder of how much things had changed, and how she was no longer walking into a hostile environment. She took a moment to let it sink in, savoring the feeling of peace. Sarah was the first to approach her, already bouncing with excitement. "Kara," she called out, her face alight with enthusiasm. "Guess what? The regional manager is coming in today for another check-in, and rumor has it they want to announce the details of the development program you're being put in charge of." She clapped her hands together, her joy evident. "It's finally happening." Kara's heart fluttered. Though she knew about the program, the thought of actually stepping into a leadership role still felt like a dream. She nodded, her voice steady but her excitement palpable. "I'm ready. I just never thought I'd be here. But I want to do this, not just for me, but for all of us." The words felt natural, but they resonated deeply within her. This was no longer about merely surviving or trying to avoid conflict. This was about making the restaurant a place where everyone could feel safe and valued, a place where they could work with pride. She thought back to the struggles each one of them had faced under Dave's management, and felt a renewed determination to ensure no one would ever have to feel that way again. Later in the day, the regional manager arrived, accompanied by a few members from corporate. Kara noticed her co-workers glancing at her with supportive smiles, silently cheering her on as the manager called her aside to discuss her new responsibilities. The atmosphere in the room was electric, charged with the team's shared excitement for this fresh start. "Kara," the regional manager began, his tone warm and proud. "We've decided to launch the leadership development program here, and we couldn't think of anyone better to lead the initiative than you. Your resilience and natural ability to inspire your peers have made a significant impact. This program isn't just about training, it's about setting a new standard, and we believe you can be the one to set that standard." Kara took a deep breath, absorbing his words. The weight of this opportunity was immense, but it felt right. She nodded, her eyes shining. "Thank you, sir. I'm ready to do everything I can to help create a better environment here." The manager smiled approvingly and handed her a packet detailing the new program. "I'm confident you'll make a lasting impact. And remember, we're here to support you every step of the way." After the meeting, Kara returned to the dining area, holding the packet in her hands. Her co-workers gathered around her, eager to hear the details. She explained how the program would work, outlining the training sessions, workshops, and new policies that would prioritize employee well-being and development. Her teammates listened with rapt attention, nodding and exchanging excited glances as she spoke. When she finished, there was a brief, almost reverent silence before Sarah stepped forward, her voice filled with admiration. "Kara, this is incredible. I can't believe how far we've come, and it's all because of you." Marcos nodded in agreement, a proud smile spreading across his face. "You've turned this place into something that feels like home. It's like you've given us all a voice." Their words moved Kara deeply, and she took a moment to look around at the faces of her team, the very people who had once been as worn down as she was, now filled with optimism. She realized that this journey hadn't just been about overcoming her own hardships. It was about lifting up everyone around her, building a place where they could all thrive. As they began their shifts, the restaurant hummed with a renewed energy. Kara moved between tables, her interactions with customers reflecting the confidence and pride she felt in her role. She offered a warm smile to each person she served, noticing how her co-workers carried themselves with the same renewed enthusiasm. It was as though the restaurant itself had transformed, filled with an ease and warmth that no amount of tension or fear could ever cast a shadow on again. In a quiet moment between orders, Kara paused and looked around, taking it all in. The restaurant she had once dreaded coming to had become a place where she felt truly valued, a place where her voice mattered. It wasn't just a job anymore. It was a community, a shared space where each person contributed to something greater. And as she looked at the people she worked with, her heart swelled with gratitude. She knew that they had all played a part in building this environment. Together, they had turned the restaurant into a place of respect, kindness, and hope. And she, Kara, the once overlooked waitress, was at the heart of it all, leading the way into a future they were all proud to be a part of. As the days passed, Kara settled into her new role, the leadership program gradually taking shape under her guidance. She led training sessions with her co-workers, discussing teamwork, communication, and the importance of creating a respectful work environment. She felt herself growing with each session, her confidence building as she stepped more fully into this position of responsibility. The team responded with enthusiasm, and Kara could see the pride in their faces as they participated, sharing ideas and supporting one another in ways they never had before. One day, as she was wrapping up a workshop on conflict resolution, Marcos raised his hand. "Kara, I just wanted to say, thank you," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I never thought I'd feel this way about work. For a long time, this place was just a job to me, something to get through each day. But now, I look forward to coming in. We all do. And that's because of you." A ripple of agreement moved through the group, and Kara felt a wave of warmth and pride that was almost overwhelming. She looked around, taking in the faces of her team, the same people who had once been silent, fearful under Dave's rule, now open and unafraid, empowered by this newfound sense of unity. She realized that this wasn't just a job for any of them anymore. It was a place where they could grow, feel supported, and contribute to something meaningful. As the workshop ended, the regional manager entered, applauding softly. "I've been listening in," he said, a smile of approval on his face. "And I have to say, Kara, you've done an extraordinary job here. The changes you've brought about are nothing short of remarkable." He glanced around at the team before returning his gaze to Kara. "We want to take this program beyond just this restaurant. We're planning to implement these principles across other locations, and we'd like you to help lead this expansion, training staff at other restaurants to bring the same values and sense of community you've created here." Kara's heart leaped at the proposal, the possibilities racing through her mind. This was more than she'd ever expected, an opportunity to make an even bigger impact and help bring positive change to places that needed it. She looked around at her team, who were watching her with encouragement and pride, their expressions filled with excitement for her. "I'd be honored," she replied, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I never thought I'd be in a position to help so many people, but if I can bring this sense of respect and belonging to other places, I'd love nothing more." The regional manager nodded approvingly. "We'll start the expansion next month. You'll be traveling between locations, sharing your experiences and insights. We believe that what you've done here can truly transform our organization." After he left, Kara was surrounded by her co-workers, their congratulations and well wishes filling the room. Sarah hugged her tightly, her eyes shining with pride. "Kara, you're going to change so many lives. I'm so proud of you." Kara smiled, her heart brimming with gratitude. "I couldn't have done any of this without all of you. You believed in me when I was just trying to get through each day. And now we're all in this together." That night, as she closed up the restaurant, Kara took one last look around, reflecting on how far she had come. She'd started as a waitress, barely holding on through the challenges of each day. But now, she was a leader, someone who had created a space where people felt valued. And soon, she would be sharing that vision with others. She walked out into the night, her steps sure and her spirit soaring, ready to bring her hard-won wisdom and compassion to new places and new people, knowing that she was building something truly meaningful. A month later, Kara found herself in a new city, standing in front of a group of restaurant employees who had gathered for her first training session outside her own location. The familiar, tentative faces reminded her of her early days, when she had kept her head down just trying to get through each shift. Now she looked at them with a sense of purpose and pride, ready to share what she had learned through her journey. As she introduced herself, Kara began by telling her own story, speaking openly about the challenges she had faced under Dave's management and how, through perseverance and the support of her team, she had transformed her experience, and, ultimately, the entire work environment. She saw the looks of understanding and connection on their faces as she spoke, and she knew her words were resonating. It was a reminder of how powerful shared experiences could be, how they could inspire change in others. Over the next few weeks, Kara moved from location to location, meeting with teams, listening to their struggles, and guiding them in creating a culture of respect and unity. Each new restaurant felt like a fresh canvas, a place where she could plant the seeds of growth and community. She trained employees, held workshops, and fostered open conversations, encouraging people to support each other and to bring kindness and integrity to their work. Each time she returned to her home restaurant, she was welcomed back with open arms. Sarah, Marcos, and the rest of the team would gather around, eager to hear her stories and share their own updates. The restaurant continued to thrive in her absence, her team carrying forward the positive changes they'd built together. She realized they didn't need her there every day. They were strong on their own, and they'd created a sustainable environment that would continue to flourish. One evening, back in her hometown, she and her team celebrated at the same cafe where they had first gathered to toast the beginning of their new era. They laughed, reminisced about how far they'd come, and shared stories about the transformations they had seen in other restaurants. Kara looked around at her friends, the people who had become her family, and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had set out to survive, to endure, but she had done so much more. She had transformed, thrived, and inspired. As the night wore on, Sarah raised a glass, her voice full of emotion. "To Kara," she said, smiling. "Our leader, our friend, and the one who showed us what's possible when you never give up." They clinked glasses, and Kara felt a surge of gratitude, not only for the journey she'd taken but for the people who had stood beside her. She had found strength in herself and in others, and together they had created something lasting. As she walked home that night, Kara felt the weight of her accomplishments settle over her, not as a burden but as a foundation, something solid, something earned. She was no longer the waitress who once endured in silence. She was a leader, a mentor, a force for positive change. And she knew, as she looked up at the stars, that this was only the beginning. Her journey would continue, touching more lives and creating more spaces where everyone could feel respected, valued, and proud. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, please give it a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more content that resonates. See you in the next video.